Welcome to the all-new retrained Apocalymon and Dark Masters deck gameplay guide for EX10. We got Dan here today playing on the Apocalymon deck, so we're gonna go check it out and see how he does with it, and we're gonna commentate over as well as seeing what matchup is going to be facing off against. The first one we're going to be facing off against is Darkness Bagramon, or the Bagra army, which also got a bunch of new support from EX10 Sinister Order. So Dan decided to mulligan his hand right there, probably because there's not a lot of options for him to really play. Generally, I think in this deck you want to see your level 5s early so you can hard drop them and search and find your 6s, and then start playing your 6s, which is kind of like a megazoo style deck because they all have the same effect of being able to reduce their play cost as long as you don't have any other Digimon aside from Dark Masters in his text that you control. So it looks kind of rough here for the opponent. So Dan is starting second, but the opponent is going to go with a Digicross of the hard play with Tactimon right off the bat, just like that. Man, and there's only 2 cards left to play. That probably means the opponent bricked pretty hard there. Looks like they're going to trash their own sources. Going to use Tactimon to attempt to delete itself. I guess when it will leave the battle area, it's going to use its own protection effect for the sake of just drawing the card from one of the inherited effects there. So all Dan has to do is just hard drop the Piedmon, and then pretty much gets to reduce its play cost, and then for 6, and then that will just delete the Tactimon and deal with it right off the bat. I guess in hindsight, maybe the opponent should have just kept the Tactimon there in case of that was going to happen, but who knows? That's why with the Dark Masters trade, they have all the different colors, they have many different control tools and removal, and all the other Dark Masters have the same effect, the new ones, where if they get deleted, and as they get deleted at the end of turn, once their hard played out, they get to go into the security face up. What that happens is it becomes kind of like a semi-security control deck, because then it has security bomb effect when you check into it. But the main idea is to rack them up at the bottom of your security face up by having all 4 of them. You want to be able to play out your Apocalymon for reduced cost, and with reduced cost, that's how you get to spit out all the different Dark Masters, all 4 of them. They'll gain rush, and you can go for a massive all-out attack, kind of like a Royal Knights deck, kind of in a way where you're calling out all the buddies and friends together to take out all your opponent's security. So the opponent in the Bagra army side seems to be able to be starting to climb back up a little bit. They kind of have to like Digi-evolve in the back, which is not really ideal because generally you want to set up Tamers so you can go for Digicross with you and all that kind of stuff, but it looks like they don't really have any other choice, so they're just going to go all the way up into a Bagramon, tuck the Gigadramon away underneath the Kari there, and now Dan's going to use the Metal Seedramon and start attacking it and stunning it down. He's already at 3 different Dark Masters in the security, and he's only 1 off missing with the Puppetmon, and then now he's going to go for an early Apocalymon play. So like I mentioned, it's ideal that you want to go for the late game play so that once you have all 4, you can go for the all-out attack. But this is not a bad way to play it in the early stages game as well, because now by reducing the play cost by 12, he's going to pay 5 memory, and by doing so, he can play the 3 of them back out, resolve their on-play effects with Machinedramon to de-digivolve 2, and then Piedmon to delete the unsuspended, and now he has a 17k body on the board like that. I'm not entirely sure, just because I feel like if you save it, he can actually excel to his win condition a little faster. I don't know if it was necessarily just to address the Bagramon on the board like that, but it looks like the opponent comes down with a Damimon, which does luckily get into a U, which he can then play out for free. But now with 17k, he's just going to keep continuously beating it down. I think that was his plan to gain his momentum. But Damimon has blocker, so it can block and it can save, and it can also put something underneath as well from trash. I have saves in his text, which is going to be a Soundbird Mon, and then you is going to have all turns to gain a memory and draw a card off of that. He's going to end the turn with a Spiral Mountain to set it up, and then potentially play out more Dark Masters with its delay effect. And then the opponent's going to start chipping and start their game plan. Now that they have a Tamer, they can start getting into their combos and start doing things eventually. But I can see Dan is not very worried either, just because he has Black Wargreymon Ace in his hand, which can simply just outright delete a Tamer. And by doing so, he'll get rid of all the sources, and the opponent is going to have to rebuild all over again by racking up those sources underneath you to slow it down. So now he's going to use the delay of the Spiral Mountain. He's going to look like he's going to drop something out. He's going to go for the Metal Seedramon, which will stun down one of the U's, but they don't really need to suspend to use their effects either. But I think his intention is really just to try and attack as much as he can and pressure for the lethal game. And then now he's gonna go for a Black War Gray Ace to delete that other U, passing the opponent to 4, which is quite a bit of memory to work with. But this is also where the memory set Akari works out really nicely from BT8, because when you put your cards into security, you gain a card in security so that you can actually just suspend it to gain that extra memory as well, which works very nicely together with deck. Of course, there's the mother, which you guys saw earlier, and the whole idea is that you use your level 5s together to delete that mother so they can play out your Dark Masters in the breeding area for free, which then you push out, and then you can constantly will have a level 6 sticking on the board. As long as your opponent's not able to remove it, you're constantly gonna beat them down over and over. So this is a tricky spot for sure for the opponent, and Dan is in a good position now because the opponent is only down to 1 security, and all he has to do is just to finish it off with 2 swings next turn. So with 3 memory, the opponent could cycle and do quite a bit of things. Looks like they're gonna go for a potential Digicross play right here and see which Bagra army they're gonna go into. They're gonna go into the Bagramon, looks like. They're gonna use the Dual Tamer as well to add additional source from hand or trash as well, or from hand or trash, or you can do it underneath Tamers, and then you can still use you to tuck in from the Tamers as well to further reduce the play cost, only paying 7 memory. But with Bagramon, you get to choose a bunch of sources, which is kind of cool, because when Digicrossing with the Tamers, and then now you get to combo and synergize effect, you get to tuck a Digimon away. But Bagramon itself is actually at 13k, making Black War Greymon Ace immune to the effect. So all the opponent can do is tuck away the Apocalymon underneath the Kari, and meanwhile Black War Greymon now is at 16k, which also has Raid, which can actually get rid of the opponent's Bagramon from that. So this is pretty good on Dan's position, because a lot of the top end Digimon such as Bagramon, Darkness Bagramon, Blastmon, most of those Bagra army big boss cards are all 13k, where the Black War Greymon is now just going to constantly become stronger and stronger. So he's going to raid and swing over it, getting rid of it there, and then now going to end the turn by going into a Gigadramon to search and fetch for more pieces. And there we go, there's the Puppetmon being placed in the battle area by deleting the mother. But now he doesn't have the Apocalypse. He needs to find a way to get another potential Apocalypse to go for the play, because now he has 4 of them. He can just drop it for 1 cost. The opponent's going to swing in with Soundbirdmon. He's going to counter by blast acing into Black War Gray so that to delete the other U, always trying to target the one from BT10, because that one's the one that gives the most value. And then there, you block the attack. And there you go. He's pressuring game again in the next following turn. Swing with the both Black War Grays. The opponent comes down with a Blastmon, which is a pretty crazy card. So with Digicrossing with 3 different sources, that's where he gets to come out with a big blocker that can taunt the opponent's Digimon, but itself is 13k. So once again, Black War Gray Ace is going to gain immunity. The taunting is not going to work on the Black War Gray, and even so, its DP is still relatively strong. So Dan is considering if he wants to swing here or not, but I don't think he really knows what the Blastmon does. So he's probably going to be in for a surprise here if he goes for it, and he does. So with Black War Gray Ace, even though it's at 16k, what Blastmon actually does is when the Digimon attacks, he gets to trash like 2 sources, and the opponent's Blastmon is going to gain an extra 3000 DP and security attack +1 that is going to last until the end of the opponent's turn. And with Blastmon now pumping up all the way to 16k, it's actually going to go beyond the DP of Black War Greymon Ace. And also at the same time, he's steal a bit of memory because he trashed the sources from the inherit effects that gets to gain a memory during the opponent's turn. And with that, the Ace overflow is going to happen, stealing the turn, which is pretty crazy. And is this a potential comeback on the opponent's side? Because the opponent's going to try to swing with the Blastmon for sure. It does have collision though, that's the thing, which forces the opponents to block, which is going to get rid of the Puppetmon there. So Dan, if he's going to block with the Black War Gray Ace, he's going to just give more memory away. So of course he's going to try to collision and hit with the puppet. So all Dan really needs is a Apocalymon, not that Apocalymon on his hand. That was the older one from BT15. He needs a new one in order to actually finish the game off, which is rather unfortunate, because all he had to do, if he has it, he can just play it for 1 cost, and then here comes all the Dark Masters, and it will be just an easy win from there. So I guess there's an argument to say, like, maybe he should have just kept that one from early on, just because it is your big winning card and not having to exhaust it that early. So just to address a Bagramon. But overall here, he's still sitting in a decent position because he has like 6 security that the opponent has to go through. And he's going to swing with Black War Gray Ace, unfortunately hitting into a Darkness Bagramon, which is also going to be 16k. And with Black War Gray only being 15, Ace Overflow, now the opponent's back again, starting their cycling, swing with Soundbird, tuck sources underneath you and the Nene, and as well as you to gain additional memory and draw cards. And now hits into a Spiral Mountain, which is going to let Dan play out a Dark Master trait Digimon. Unfortunately, he's not going to be able to play out the level 5s because they don't have that trait, so it's going to be your level 6s from hand or trash. So he has something in his hand, which honestly, it's going to be the Machinedramon or the Piedmon here. So he goes for the Piedmon, which will delete the Blastmon, getting rid of it. And then the Dark Master Digimon is going to get deleted at the end of that particular turn as well, either way. And then now he gets to put another Piedmon underneath in security, but he won't be able to because he already has a purple Digimon there. So depending on what the opponent does now here, they're going to go into another Bagramon. And once again, Digi-crossing with different requirements. The opponent has a lot of different cards in their trash that they can utilize. They have the U to further reduce the play cost even more, making it incredibly cheap, tucking the Piedmon away and trashing the last face down security that Dan has, which is Spiral Mountain anyways, and he now uses another one. I think he's just trying to draw and hopefully find his other Apocally, and he's just thinking, okay, when is he gonna get this? And even I'm here sitting here like, oh man, all he needs is that, and he could just rush for game and go for it. But again, the opponent only has 0 security. He's sitting in a pretty good position, and Bagman Army has a lot of really cool control tools, but they don't really quite have enough damage to push through either, aside from the Blastmon. And you can see the opponent's deck is running rather thin. And if you guys know it already, and you guys saw the Apocalymon in his hand, we know that is the way for him to finish it off. I think he kind of prolonged it an extra turn for a necessary reason. I feel like he could have just dropped the Apocally, even though it would cost a lot. Maybe he didn't have enough memory, but all he had to do was mill the rest of the cards. There's only 2 cards to mill anyways, and he could have won from there. But the opponent swings, and yeah, with Machinedramon has that effect, allowing them to play that level 5 back. And wow, what a crazy Darkness Bagger play here, which randomly picks out the Puppet Ace from Dan's hand and tucks it underneath the Gigadramon, and then now using the rest of the effect to tuck the 3 sources under at the very top, Darkness Baggermon gets to delete something, so he's going to end up deleting the Gigadron most likely, and then with Ace Overflow, getting 4 memory back, keeping the turn. Not going to be able to swing here, which is also unfortunate. But wow, what a crazy one right there. So either way, like, again, I'm very sure like the Darkness Bagramon player doesn't really know what else they can really do here. They're trying to do their best to make a comeback, but Dan pretty much has it in the next turn, because now that he has more Dark Masters in the trash, he can actually play a Pokemon for reduced cost, and they end the turn with playing a Dami. He's gonna use a Spiral Mountain at the end of the turn just to play on stun up stuff, and then with that, he finds his EX10 Apocalymon, but you know what? A little too late for that, so might as well just go in style instead and just double checking what other effects that he might need to play around. They have like redirects, so he's not going to be worried about that, because now all he's going to do is going to mill it. He's going to use the Metal Siegedramon on the board with the Machinedramon and the Piedmon in the trash. Reduce the play cost of Apocalymon. He doesn't even need to have 3. 2 is already good enough to pass the turn, because all he has to do then is now tuck a final source underneath. Like I said, pass turn and then mill the rest out. And yeah, that's a win for there. Apocalymon classic style. Next game we'll be facing off against Pyramidimon as well as Magnetic Dramon, which is closed in Sunarizamon's deck, which has gotten a tremendous amount of support in EX10 Sinister Order as well, and that deck is absolutely crazy. And let's see how Dan can fare against this one. So he's gonna go a little bit slow early. The opponent starts off first, and he's gonna flip and hatch his mother, and then have a Digimon Emperor ready to go to slow down the opponents, because that Sunarisamon right there is intended to reduce the Digivolution cost by 1, and this forces the opponent to Digivolve in the back, so they kind of forego that kind of effect there. And we can see he's got another Digimon Emperor that I think he might be contemplating going into, but the opponent does have a close with a memory setter. So of course it's still ideal to hard drop your level 5 so-called Dark Masters first as much as possible, finding your level 6 Dark Masters, and then deleting the mother and setting up the Machinedramon right there, which is going to be perfect to go. If the opponent ever tries to push out and try to attack, I can see that he has a Grand Kuwaga Ace that can actually help him get rid of Tamers as well, which is going to be important in this matchup. He's going to swing with Machinedramon, running into a Pyramidi, which then gets to hide in the security, and then chips away with Lady Devi. Unfortunately, giving the opponent another memory setter close is going to be pretty crucial. He's going to finally end the turn and use the Spiral Mountain, but I think he actually forgets to draw the cards for its main effect. And then even though it was delay, it gets to be put on the battle area to use the delay effect afterwards. He still sets up the Puppetmon in the breeding area that is ready to go. But realistically, I think in this game, it's not going to matter too much, even if he missed out that draw 2 on the Spiral Mountain. Here, he's going to continue to beat down as much as he can with his level 6s, but I think he may not be able to close the game just yet, and he's actually about to find out the crazy explosiveness that Pyramidimon has, especially with the new Magnetic Dramon. So he's setting up his board right here. He's ready to counter. He has the tools that he needs to play, but the opponent is now going to push up, gain a memory with the promo close, and the Landramon is ready to go, which bypasses the Digimon Emperor anyways because it's no longer a level 3 rookie coming out. And I can see it's going to be about to be doomed for him, because now the opponent's going to go into the new Programmon. Programmon's going to trash the source, which is going to be a Tumblemon to gain a memory and extra 3000 DP with collision and piercing for the entire turn, lasting to the opponent's turn. Suspend the close to retuck sources underneath, which is going to be one of them with the Tumblemon, and the other one doesn't really matter, but it looks like a D-Digivolve target one. That will kind of play around Dan's like ace. If Dan aces preemptively, and then if they're able to trash sources, that can get rid of the Grand Kawaga no problem, or maybe get rid of the close. Dan might need to consider going for the ace play here, but with all that crazy combo, the opponent is just going to suspend the close and then use the unique emblem delay to go into Pyramidimon, trash 3 sources, unsuspend here once more, gain that memory, and suspend all the tamers there, and then basically regather all the sources. And Pyramidimon is just massive. It has collision. So even if Dan aces into Grand Kawaga, even though he might be able to delete one of the closes, suspend down the Pyramidi perhaps, and maybe he should have went for that play, because here now the opponent has lethal, because if he went for Grand Kawaga, even giving the ace overflow, at least he keeps the Pyramidimon suspended down. And then it forces the opponent to have like another line to climb out on the side with the Tsunariza. But again, I think Dan doesn't expect this explosive damage, because now the Pyramidimon can swing for another 3 checks. It swung for 2 checks first, but then it constantly gonna continuously gain security attack +1. It's gonna go over the Puppetmon, which I think is okay for Dan. He gets to recover, but again, with Apocalymon with 17k DP is not enough to cover off and fend off the Pyramidimon right there. And the fact that Machine Dramon was checked into, Dan is able to play out level 5, even if he considers playing out Lady Devimon or even Giga Dramon is not going to matter at this point, because I think he really just missed his opportunity to go for the ace play. And even though if he finds the ace, as long as the opponent has a Magnetic Dramon, it's pretty much over for Dan, which is rather unfortunate. So yeah, the opponent goes into it. They're going to be able to tuck 3 sources underneath the Magnetic Dramon, I believe, and then afterwards they're going to trash the 3 sources, which will end up deleting the Giga Dramon and trashing the final security, playing around the Puppetmon security effect as well at the same time. And unfortunately, Dan doesn't get it this time. This game, we're going to take it to the test to see if it can face off against a faster paced deck, which we're facing off against Blue-Green Imperial. Definitely still a very strong meta contender deck. We're going to see if Apocalymon, how it fares against a deck like that. Generally, the opponent, as soon as they see Davis and Ken, they're going to play it out and then going to start ramping up their tamers and then being able to play out their rookies. And then with that, they can start DNA and going crazy. And that's where the first turn play, the opponent puts down the Davis Ken, and Dan is just like, I'm going to counter with you immediately with Black Wargray Ace, which is immediately going to delete the Davis and Ken. And man, oh man, guys, this has suddenly turned into a very different battle. It's almost just like the pro tag or sort of anime moments of Black Wargreymon versus Imperial, you know? Black Wargreymon certainly is the MVP in this specific matchup here. Normally, I would say Apocalymon suffers in terms of being able to keep up the pace with, like, you know, decks that can attack very quickly. But the thing is, it has relatively good control tools to play around certain different matchups. And this is a really good example of how the Black Wargreymon is being utilized. Now the opponent has to force the like hard evo into the Pale Dramon all the way up to the line into a Dragon mode and swing 2 checks and deal the damage that way. And we can see that Dan actually has a really powerful card that's kind of countering it as well, which Medieval Gallantmon is a thing as well at the same time. That card can absolutely just get rid of it. I think he's gonna go for it because he notices the stack doesn't have protection, so he's gonna suspend both his mother and the opponent's Imperial Dramon Dragon mode, which is gonna outright delete it and clear the body off. The opponent has 5 memory to work with, which is quite a bit, but it's not gonna be enough because now with Medieval on the board, it's relatively difficult for Imperial to play around it. The Imperial has to find a way to establish another Davis Ken or some kind of Davis on the board, but not going to be able to find it. Bottom decking that Davis Ken is going to feel bad. And yeah, once you are able to prevent them to have Davis and Ken or slow it down, the deck suddenly becomes very, very, very difficult and makes it a lot easier for Dan now to control it. This is not even like a Dark Master deck at this point anymore. He's not going to need to utilize his Dark Masters. He's utilizing like the toolbox control tools that he has with the megazoo, but that's also part of the Dark Masters sort of like playstyle when it comes to this deck overall. He's going to go for a Giga Dramon, giving the opponent quite a lot of memory to work with as well, and then deleting the mother to set up a Machine Dramon. And now he has quite a lot of interaction, using the mat to gain a memory back as well, putting the opponent to 4 instead. He has the Black War Gray Ace that can block. If the opponent goes beyond 13 KDP, it's going to gain immunity, which is not going to be affected by any of the fighter modes or paladins and so on. And then if the opponent ever tries to play out a Digimon and try to DNA, before that can happen, Medieval is going to kick in and pop potentially the Stingmon to slow the opponents down. So the opponent doesn't have a lot of memory to work with at all at the end. Hard playing the Wormmon, of course, Medieval is going to try to suspend something and delete something. It's going to suspend the Wormmon ideally, I think, and it's going to pop the Stingmon so that there's nothing else the opponent can really do from then on. With only 1 memory left in the rookie, there's no way you can DNA unless I guess you play Hammer Spark, or maybe perhaps you somehow gain that memory. Yeah, there's no way. Looks like the opponent just has to hard drop a Power Dramon here, which is just going to give Dan all the potential. And here's a really good showcase, I guess, of a speedy matchup of how Apocalymon does have chances to actually beat your opponents down so quickly before you even need to get into the Apocalymon combo to even finish the opponents off. This is just one of the parts of the really strong core, and the Apocalymon combo isn't just the only win condition to get into. Just a board filled with these level 5s is just insane. Now he's going to play the Cherrymon, and because Medieval is going to see a Digimon being played, you're going to be able to delete the Power Dramon, so even with like fighter mode ace, it's not going to matter. So yeah, swing with Machine Dramon, even it gets deleted, hides in security, tap mat, gain a memory, and just simply finishes off with the level 5 on the side. OnyX Burst Collection, which is one of my all-time favorites, is now live on the AVAULT store, and the first 50 collection orders will get a free exclusive OnyX Burst memory marker during this time only. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. You guys have a great day, great night, wherever you are. See you next video, and this is AVAULT signing out.